Why are you following me? Osrith had got far into the Five Counties region of Old Daneland where, having noticed a black horse just behind her, pulled Grey Shadow up slowly and slipped from his back. The man stood up in his stirrups, stretching his legs, before slipping from his horse, too, tying it by the leading rein to an overhanging tree. Thus far, up from Aylesbury, Leicester and past Derbyshire, nothing had troubled Osrith. She had managed to get food from the family she had defended once at Seizures and, further up along Ermine Street, Osrith had bought bread and meat from a farmstead. Lincoln was to her east, and she was close to the Northumbrian border, and her journey had been fine. Until now. Osrith had thought she had seen the rider behind her since Dunstanton, but many riders used the same paths she was using. Half a day and the rider was still there. So here, at Sestratoon, Osrith dismounted, tired from her ride, for she had been hoping to find rest in the district. Now, it looked as if she was going to have to fight. Withdrawing Buey as she, too, tethered her horse for a rest, Osrith stood, waiting. But the man did not move. Instead, he stood quite still, combing his straggly black hair out of his eyes, his sword firmly in his hilt. "We have met before," the man said, after a few moments, and it took a moment for Osrith to realize that she had indeed met the man before. They had slept outside, as she had journeyed south to Aylesbury, and now, it seemed, he was following her back. "So, what are you going to tell Constantine?" Osrith asked, as inspiration answered in her mind. "We," for it was indeed the spy who had ridden by her as she had gone south, 4 months before, gave her a slow smile. "You think that is all I am being paid to do?" We asked, as he took a step to Osrith. She gripped Buey tighter, but he did not appear to be a threat. "The King of Alba has told me you may be in need of protection on your perilous journeys between north and south." And perilous it could have been, with bands of Danes and thieves of any nationality abroad in the countryside, though none had troubled her yet. "I can look after myself. Would you like me to show you?" "I am sure you can," we replied, standing exactly where he was. "I saw your efforts in Aylesbury. But the growth of a child can take a person's strength. Constantine would have you safe when you return to Dunnottar." As Osrith looked at Eswi, who had busied himself with low singing and making of a fire near Hunstanton when she had gone south, a flicker of recognition flashed in her mind. Something more than a chance meeting when she had travelled. "What do you propose?" Osrith asked. "You are one of Constantine's men, are you not? Of his Pictish kin?" Eswi laughed. "I am a Gael, like him," he replied. "As am I a Pict. My line comes from Eanfrith, son of Ethelfrith, father of Oswald. Way back in history," Eswi added. "We cut down Egfrith a generation later. I am sorry for that," he added, not looking sorry in the least. "It was my father and his 2 brothers who carved the stone at Nictonsmere, to show our victory." And Osrith thought how changed he was, and who. "That is all very well," Osrith replied, trying to sound disinterested at a link to her own family history when now it was that he had interested her. "But when were you about to tell me? I could have killed you." "You wouldn't have," Eswi replied, laughing. "You would do as you are doing now, trying to sound reasonable, until you felt reason was not warranted. Then you would have run me through. Like you did so many times when Domhnall fought the Norse before Dunnottar. When Giric was exposed as traitor." Osrith stopped, and thought back to that day. She had been stopped by Sained from fighting, yet had followed tagged onto the battlefield. "You were there?" "I was there," Eswi nodded. "I was there when Giric, Griogetiu, came to my father to beg men for an uprising, to seize a throne vacated, to place Domhnall's cousin, Eochaid, upon it. I went to Glenorchy. You had killed a kin to Grioger at Iona, I recall." Osrith nodded. "My father, hating all Gaels, gave men to him. He hated the Strathclyde Cymric more," Eswi explained, "but there were more kin than the Gaels are. I remember you fighting. You gave Phelim a roasting. And now my brother, Euanst, is a Morma, and governs our lands as our father did, but in line with King Constantine's laws for the whole of Alba." Alfred would have that, Osrith thought. Unity between the Saxon and English peoples, one rule. This existed in Alba, through the foresight and planning of Saynid mac Alpin, Constantine's grandfather. But Edward was not for sharing power, and that might be his undoing if ever Utid took back Bibbenberg. Wiehr was not interested in ruling, but he had sent support to Constantine, and Constantine had returned the favor. Only a stable land, unsullied by internal strife and disagreement, with a common goal and shared purpose could act so. All this was very well, but Eswi was not necessarily trustworthy. Nevertheless, Osrith made to get back into Heod's old horse and she untied his rein from an alder tree. Beside her, Eswi had moved and a blade pricked her arm. He was right, she was slower. But not slow enough not to have withdrawn tagged seeks, and Osrith was now pressing her own blade under his chin. If Eswi cut, her arm would be damaged. If she did, his throat would never be the same again. Eswi took his blade away, and laughed. I wonder, did my cousin waste his money? Eswi said, as he stepped away from Osrith. Although I did indeed spy for him. He will have both our accounts now. You are with child? How did he know? She had only told Saynid, and had left Alba not telling Constantine. You could not conceal it well in Mercia, he told her. You told your commanders, you were sick. You could not keep your temper with Ethelred's murderer, where usually you are measured and pragmatic. How long have you been following me? Osrith demanded to know. Since you returned to Dunnottar, when you brought that babe who Constantine believes to be more his own child than the ones he has fathered himself. When you knelt to Domhnall, when there was little hope left that his mind was sane. Domhnall. For Osrith it felt like her life was a river, fast flowing like the Tyne near the coast. Her direction from Alba was changed going to Wessex, and her course diverted, like a large rock in the riverbed. Yet, once she had passed the rock, the bits of her life that had changed course had converged, and had reformed past it, without being changed by it. That was where the idea was different to real life. Osrith had been affected by the rock, it had changed her. But she was glad to be past it, and back up to Alba. So Osrith accepted Eswi, for now, and they rode further north that night, coming to a town which sat above 7 hills. They rested and Eswi told her more of Pitland, and of his family, while Osrith dozed by the firelight, pulling Miral's cloak about her to mitigate the sharp coldness which was beginning to become the feature of these late autumn days. With some astonishment, Osrith woke the next morning, having not been murdered in the night. Eswi was skinning a brace of rabbits and skewering them on sticks above a frame which had not been there when she had gone to bed that night. She had then slipped down to a stream close to the track and scooped up handfuls of the cool, good water before she saw Eswi seated on his black mount, and they swiftly crossed the wide moors north of Eofuic, and before long the Roman wall was before them, Constantine's desired border for Alba, and it did not pass unnoticed that a Pictish lord had been sent after her, a Pictish lord whose lands these would be if Constantine had his way. Beyond it, Bernician land, and Osrith settled into her journey as they passed the ancient royal palace stead of Varing and on, into woodland, until they rested at a monastery. Melrose, one of the monks told Osrith, in that very particular Bernician Pictish accent, and, when he saw that a man and a pregnant woman stood before him, jumped to one conclusion and showed them a room. It did not bother Osrith, who paid the monk from the money Miral must have sneaked into Grey Shadow's panniers, what he had deemed her wages and that she thought she had left on the table in Aylesbury's armoury, but Eswi looked a little abashed at being in her company alone. But it wasn't as if she could get more pregnant, and made to the door with her cloak. It would be better than sleeping outdoors, at any rate, no wolves or bears to chance upon her. I would not have ye sleep on the floor, Eswi insisted, when she saw he making to kneel down, and took her arm and led her to the bed, as he made to settle on what looked like newly replaced straw floor himself. Osrith felt a gratitude to him, pleased she had someone to talk to on this 3-day ride home. Melrose. This was where Father Bicker had been left, as a baby, as a foundling, and had learned his Latin and Greek and Bible teachings. Where he had learned to be a priest, and Osrith idly wondered about him here, wondering if anyone knew a man named Bicker, whether he was remembered. But they had to press on early the next morning, for a fog was beginning to fall, and if they had not it was more than likely that Eswi and Osrith would get lost in it. I spent a lot of my time here, Eswi confirmed, as if thinking on the landscape around them, too. You once went to Dunkeld to be a soldier, I hear. But there is no fortress here, Osrith pointed out. Eswi laughed. There is the monastery. I am ordained. It still follows Combe-Sill, he added, and Osrith felt herself open her mouth as she thought about that. The Irish Church still had a stronghold in Bernishan territory, perhaps unchanged from the time of Aidan. Then I am pleased to meet a descendant of Combe-Sill, Osrith said, bowing her head, and Eswi laughed again. It explained his straggly hair at any rate, although the baldness which usually came with the Irish Church's tonsure seemed to have grown back, while the long hair behind Eswi's head had grown straggly. It has been a long time since I practiced, Eswi replied. I usually look to the land, and my people. He saw the look in his eye, the people hereabouts who will be my people when Constantine claims to the wall, he added shrewdly. And that included Bibbenberg. All the lands to the wall meant her brother Wigger's land, and though they had spoken in terms of treaty, Wigger, at least, seemed ambivalent about their arrangement. Here, at Melrose, a priest came to Bibbenberg. And I knew him in Wessex. Bicker was his name, Osrith added, fiddling with her hair as she had done when she was a child, when Bicker was talking to her. Her hand caught Eric's jewel and she took it out of her hair and folded some of it behind her ear before replacing it. He died, several years ago. And Eswi's face lit up, as if the sun was behind his eyes, and he nodded his head. I was young, very young, when my father sent me from Caeligwylid to Melrose, to practice the Irish Church. I remember him. Always very kind. Big, although all grown-ups are big when you are small, don't you think? Eswi enthused. Red hair, palsied limbs. Some of the boys made fun of him, I beat them for it. He was good, and barely beat us at all. Bicker, Osrith thought again. He had died at a very old age, but had still been able to make Osrith freeze with a word, as if she had been caught doing something wrong. At least she had gone south, at least she had taken Edra, and even then, she felt her whole life open to him, as if waiting for his interrogation. Very soon the low highlands beyond Culdees were beginning to sketch on the horizon, and Osrith watched people heading towards the monastery. They were to go round, as Eric and Siegfried had done, to get onto the north bank and then veer west, and Grey Shadow's hooves crackled over tiny stones in the adolescent Forth 40 miles away. It did feel like home, with the crisp, sharp air of the ground higher than that of the chalklands down in the south of the British island, and at once Osrith wondered how she had ever thought to have considered anywhere, other than perhaps Bibbenberg, a place she could think of as home. Maybe Mercia, but that was through the people, not the land, though Osrith let her mind dwell on the green and gold of the undulating landscape in the middle of the country, and hoped that it was faring well under her brother's rule. Did you not hear? Eswi asked her, with astonishment, when Osrith voiced her desire for Mercia's peace and independence. The Lord Ute had abdicated the throne the day after his coronation. The Lady Ethelfled was proposed, and accepted. The Lady Ethelfled. Well, it made sense. Uhtred, though suitable for Mercia, was constrained by a crown. Ethelfled, who would have been King of Wessex had she been male, had the consolation prize. But the people loved her, and she would keep it independent. And it gave Osrith yet another reason never to visit the place ever again.